What's up, guys? It's Church from Overwatch, and this is a video I've been meaning to do for a long time, and I'm only now getting around to it. But basically, this is my everyday gun. This is a gun that I take this to every field I go to. This is my #1 priority. I always make sure it goes up, or it's up, and it's ready for use at the field. But this is just my Mark 18. And it's basically a KWA SR10 base with a Mark 18, a Madbull Mark 18 rail system, 10.5-inch SR7 barrel, Madbull 363, 603 inner barrel, a Surefire silencer, and I got M-Bus on there, a Bravo T1, and an Element Surefire M910A grip. And inside it, though, is really where the magic is. It chronos about 50 rounds a second at 340 to 350 feet per second on a 2.8, and that's running it on an 11.1 volt 25C or 20C. Is it a 20C? Yeah, a 20C battery. And I'll see here. I'll let you guys hear it right quick before I actually open it up and show you guys the insides. But I've had several people ask me, what's inside it, what's making it shoot so good, because this thing shoots like a truck. And I'll show you guys in depth in a second, but here's semi-auto. And before you guys start, posting up, oh my god, 360, 350 feet per second on a 2.8 at 50 rounds a second, that's stupid. Well, I did this because I ironically don't really care for rate of fire built guns, but that seems to be a growing fad in my neck of the woods, and so I decided, I'll build one. That way I can make fun of people who use them. So whenever I go to the fields and people are like, oh my god, that thing's shooting insane, I can be like, yeah, but watch me use semi-automatic only with it, the entire game, the entire day. And so that's kind of why I built it. I rarely use full auto, and as a matter of fact, I have this thing on a 3-shot burst, so whenever I do, flip it over for a few quicker extra shots, I'll put it on 3-shot burst and just, nothing to it. But anyhow, in a second here, I'll get into the gearbox and show it to you. Alright, so basically what we have here is the AWS Raptor Mosfet, a speed trigger, a KWA bevel gear, Spur gear, a Seigetek DSG, a King Arms tappet plate, an SHS 14 tooth high speed, a Prometheus M170 spring, and the stock KWA spring guide, stock KWA cylinder, and I can't remember what kind of cylinder head this is. It's got a red ring on the inside, and I'll actually just take it out for you guys right quick. I Teflon taped the cylinder head. And there's, as you can see, the cylinder head. So if you guys feel like enlightening me on what kind of cylinder head this is, I'd really appreciate it. It's got a silver ring on the inside, the red ring on the outside right here, I guess is a sorbitane spacer. And I mean, the AOE with this cylinder head was fantastic stock. I mean, it's literally right on like the 1230 mark. But anyhow, the only gear I had to shim was the DSG itself, which, as I previously stated, that's a Seigetek DSG. As you can see, the tappet plate here is a King Arms tappet plate. I didn't clip the M170 at all. The cylinder head, like I said, already corrected the AOE really well. I'm running the stock KWA air nozzle, and it works really well. I did have to modify my tappet return spring because I wasn't getting maximum compression. Well, I shouldn't say compression. The tappet plate wasn't resetting fast enough to push the nozzle all the way up to the back of the BB, thus I was getting a lot of velocity drop, especially when you're belting at like 50 rounds a second. And so I cut the tappet return spring, and then I took a couple winds and I just flexed them outwards, and that's why it's a bit of an odd shape. The location of the hoops aren't in the right places, and so I had to shorten that. I used about 3 loops. I cut off the original existing loop, and then I pulled 3 more out and flexed them, and that gave it enough tension. So right now I'm shooting consistently on full auto at about 330 at 50, and then whenever I bump it up to semi-auto, it shoots right at about 360 on a 2.8, and it's pretty straightforward. I'm using a Lonex polymer cylinder head, or a Lonex polymer piston head, excuse me, and then the SHS 14 tooth blue piston. And I'm really amazed at how little wear this piston has for running an M170 spring. You know, I didn't anticipate it lasting that long, because I just used it for the first weekend yesterday, as a matter of fact. And as you can see, it's in pretty solid condition. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot of rub. There is on the last tooth in the piston, but that's to be expected. And there is a little bit right here on the second tooth on the piston, but that's no big deal. Everything else looks like it's in pretty solid shape. You know, the cylinder head's in good shape. I have outstanding compression. You know, the piston pushes back on me, and so I got outstanding compression all the way through the air nozzle, which is good news. But I mean, it's honestly pretty straightforward. So like I said, I do have the AWS Raptor, and that thing's a monster. That's bar none the best MOSFET I've ever used. And the speed trigger, the speed trigger makes it so basically all I have to do is go from here on the trigger to there, and the gun goes. You know, I mean, you can see the button switch right there, and as that just barely taps it, that thing's gonna go. And so I mean, I really love the MOSFET. I love the speed trigger. I bought another one for my Shrike, and I'm gonna install it at some point as soon as I get a MOSFET for the Shrike. But the motor I'm using is a Lonex A2, and it didn't really impress me a whole lot. I think I'm gonna go back to my Tianli 35. I have a Tianli 35,000. It's a balanced Tianli, and it cycles as fast with the strength of the Lonex, and I just like the way the Tianlis have spiraled copper coils around the armature, in contrast to Lonex's vertical armatures, or the vertical wire coils around the Lonex motor. But as you can see on the King R's tappet, I also cut the tappet right here, so as the gear cycles and pulls back the tappet plate, it releases right here, just barely early. That way it'll start to cycle forwards, and then piston will drop, reach the front, and by that point the air nozzle's pushed up all the way on the back of the BB, and this cut spring really helps. I think I might actually end up having to cut it a little bit more, because it's like I said, whenever I shoot on full auto, it does cycle it at about 330 feet per second, whereas semi was 350 to 360. So I think I'm going to try trimming it a little bit more to apply a little bit more tension. But that's honestly about all there is. This is a KWA gearbox, as you guys could probably tell, and I am running the stock KWA gears with that Seigetek DSG, and it works out beautifully. You know, I haven't had any problems out of the gun at all in terms of functionality. I'm running XT60 connectors on a Genzace 20C 11.1 volt battery, and the thing's an absolute monster. I have a Madbull 603 with the stock KWA hop-up setup, and I'm running a R-hop through it, and that thing is it's absolutely awesome. But that honestly about sums it up. I've just had several people ask me what was in my gun, what I shoot, why I get good range, why my rate of fire is pretty stupid. And that's all I really know how to tell you guys. Again, I don't endorse high rates of fire. I don't really like it for all that matters. I've always been perfectly content with 25 rounds a second or so, and even then I still pretty much restrict myself to semi the majority of the time. And so I don't endorse high rates of fire. I don't like that kind of thing. That's why I switched away from Polar Stars. Is simply because there's so much abuse, and then there's the huge negative connotation that rides along with the Polar Star brand. But that's neither here nor there. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you like it, subscribe. If you hate it, well, leave positive comments and let me know what to improve. If you guys have any criticisms or anything, or any more questions, let me know. I'll be glad to help you guys out however I can. You might notice that I don't have the ARL in right now. Well, that's because sometimes if I pull this DSG out and I put my my single sector back in with like an M120, I like to sometimes put it on precocking mode. That way, you know, it'll pull the piston all the way back the first shot, and then the second shot, it'll just all the way cycle the piston all the way back, and then the gear only has to travel that much further to get the piston to release, and then it cycles it all the way back again. But y'all can Google pre-cocking MOSFET if you want to hear more about that stuff. But I do normally have my anti-reverse latch in, even though you don't actually have to run them with these MOSFETs. These are fully auto or complete cycling MOSFETs. It's very similar to the Sistema system without the cutoff system for empty magazines. But they do require a little bit of work. For instance, the copper plate on your selector plate, you have to remove that, and the switch system in its entirety is pretty much cut out. But again, if you guys want to hear more about that, this was an AWS Raptor Mosfet, which AWS sunk, and now they're BTC, Black Talon Company, I believe. And their new equivalent to this is the Chimera, which hopefully they'll release a new trigger board system like that, because I absolutely love this MOSFET. This is the best MOSFET I've ever used. But anyhow, again, if you guys have questions or anything, let me know. I'll be glad to help however I can. But thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, all that jazz, and see you next time.